So welcome to Bunny's Designs. This is a live show, live Thursday, on Ustream.tv, and it's recorded for YouTube for people to watch at their leisure. So if you like the videos, please like and subscribe. Got any suggestions or requests, anything that you see, pop it in the comments below. I try to get back to people as soon as possible. I'm going to be working in Animorphia, and again, I kind of neglected this book because the other ones came out so quickly. So I'm trying to kind of catch up and finish books, because I'm ashamed to say I haven't finished a colour book yet. So I found the flamingos, and I thought I'd use my pencils, and what I've done with my watercolour pencils, because they were second hand but looked in good condition from eBay, I bought a set of 40 Caran d'Ache Swiss colour, and also Prismacolor watercolours. So they both look like they have shiny wax pencils. They all react very, very similarly, so they're very good quality. Now I know that the Derwent is professional watercolour. I'm not sure about the other two, but I know they're quite good quality and they react the same. But I know that the Derwents are light, fast, and they're for professional watercolouring. So I've got all sets in here. So I've got a set of 40 Swiss colour, 36 Prisma watercolour, and the 72 Derwents. And I've put them in colour order rather than in manufacture order. So instead of having yellows in 3 different sets, I put them all together. And it took quite a while, but I've scratched the colours. I scratched the colours in such a way, and it did take quite a long time because sometimes there wasn't much in it, but just very slight differences. So they're all in colour order, and it's a job to do while you're watching TV, but it's quite a nice little job. Once you've done it, you don't have to do it again, excuse me, unless you take all the pencils out, but normally you're only taking 1 or 2 out at a time. And this pencil case I really love because I can take the sleeves out and I can use them, and then I can just bob them away. And instead of fishing through things and dropping them like I normally do, the pencils aren't going anywhere, but I can see every single one that I want. I've tried to make it so that all the greens are on here, all the yellows and oranges are on that side, all the blues are on that side, all the reds and pinks and purples are on that side. These are all the browns, and then I've got greys, and I've got some watercolour pencils here. So they're basically a pencil, a graphite pencil, but it's for water sketching in black and white or greys, and they're quite nice to use. I might show how to do those if anybody's interested. You draw, and then you can kind of swish it around a bit to make a grayscale. I suppose that'd be quite good to do my coloured mushrooms with a watercolour grayscale and then let it dry and then go over it as well. So we've got the colours here, and I tried to make a colour sketchbook. So I started this one when I was doing Joanna Basford's we'll find it, that's the Neo colours as well. You can use Neo colours scratch from a paper palette. That's the ink 10s that I was playing with, and I like to number them because then I know what I'm doing. And that's the Derwents, that's my new set. This is the vintage set. So this page here is what I used to colour Joanna's Jungle book, Magical Jungle. And you have more precision, you have more colouring expertise when you use a paper palette. So I love doing this. There's a couple of videos of that. I might do another fast video where you can just see what colours I'm using and how I'm using it. And sometimes you can put colours on top of colours. Now it's a paper, so you have to let it dry. but there's no reason why you can't build up, but you have to work barely damp with the colours and then go back in there. So I enjoyed working there, and that's the paper palette. So I've written the numbers on quite roughly, just scratched them, but it means I do have some idea that when I go back to this page, this is good quality sketchbook page. This is I think this is the CY Extra Wet Strength, and it's the one that I use in the little book of watercolours. So these are the Derwent scratched in, and you can use them from here. And I also have a colour guide, so it means that you can really see what you can get out of one pencil. And you can obviously mix two together, make thousands of colours. And it's just a nice way to work, and it's very dry, there's nothing to spill. You can just use a jam jar. A fat bottomed face cream jar is quite nice because it gives you a lid to put the baby wipe in. And the way to use these paper palettes and to watercolour in your books is you dunk your brush in, draw it backwards gently and twist. So you're going to have a barely damp brush and you're going to have a point, and then you can just pick up your colour. And that's what I call watercolouring. Just getting beautiful watercolours, but just using a barely damp brush. So the other way you can use these pencils is to actually scratch colour in, and you can do this beforehand. You can colour the whole book in like this. You just scratch all the colour in, and if you want to make some things darker, then you have to wait obviously till you're home, but it means you can leave the pencils at home and you can just take your book and a water brush, and you can then manipulate the colour. I've done that in several different ones. Caran d'Ache colour 2s, Inktense pencils, and these Derwent watercolour pencils all work this way. Excuse me. So, oops. I scratched some colour into some areas, and I wanted to show, but I don't know if I've got the pencil. If you scratch colour in and you've made a mistake before you wet it, you can use an eraser. I've got an eraser, but I don't know if I can use that one. So I'd put a little bit of pink on here by mistake. Now I normally use the Derwent one. And I thought I'll go over the top of it with the dark and it won't matter. So I want to show. So the Derwent electric eraser is really good and precise. And it's the nipping and the thingy that I find difficult. But I've managed to take off the pink that I put on there by mistake. So I can go back into my I use indigo number 36 for my clouds. I find it's a really grey, blue grey, so I scratch the colour into the shadow areas. So scratch a little bit of colour. So you can do it this way and then leave the pencils at home. And what you could also do if you really wanted is scratch the colours in big squares, but the best way to do it is to make a little book of watercolours. So I've made little squares and labelled them, and I've got every Derwent watercolour pencil on a little square. And this is good quality sketchbook paper. It's not watercolour paper. Watercolour paper soaks in water and sucks up colour. We want the colour to sit on top because we want to use this for a good few years. So my book, which I can't see at the moment, mine has been used, but when you've used a certain colour, because you've labelled it, if you've used more blue than any other, you just look for the pencil and you scratch over the top. So there is a video called Revamping Your Watercolour Pencil Little Colour Book. So that's the easiest way, and then you could take this and it will probably colour quite a few colour books with all this colour. I've actually done it with the Neos as well. I've done it with my Neo Colour 2s. So the Neos can stay at home, but I've still got all the colours that I want. But if you want to be a little bit more precise, the other way to do it is to scratch colour on a good quality sketchbook paper, because we're not watercolouring as we're wetting everything. This isn't watercolour paper. We're working very dry. So this one is number 36. So I normally put a 36. So I know which colour it is. I'm working with my Aquafine Riggers Daily Rounding. I've got a 2, 4 and a 6. Again, twist on a baby wipe. Pick up some colour. And then you're away. I'll show you on the edge there how much colour that you get. But what you've got from that very dark colour, you've got a beautiful watercolour effect. Now I've actually put some colour into here. Which one shall I do? I'll do the top one. And I always like 3 brushes. So I've got a big, a medium and a small. And then I have a very tiny brush. This one's quite good. This is the Winsor & Newton, and it's the little brush that's in the watercolour sets. And I always find this one to be really good, because that's going to get to spaces that probably these 2 or 3 won't. So it's good to have a 2, a 4 and a 6. You don't really need a 1, 2, 3, 4. It's good to have a gap. So you could have 5, 3 and 1. On the other ones I think I've got 5. Yeah, I've got 5, 3 and 1. And these are the Sable Riggers from Winsor & Newton. So again, you dunk them gently and twist them. And I've got 1, 3 and a 5. So I tend to buy them in 3s, but I do like a finer one. I think it's just sometimes a bit easy if you've got a tiny space not to go over the line. And remember, a bigger brush for a bigger space. You can also do this with the Derwent number 1 watercolour brush, because the number 1 is small. I squeeze water and then I take off and draw backwards, twisting to a point, and I manipulate just the edge. So I didn't use the watercolour brush with this one, so I shall carry on as I was. So I'm going to use the bit bigger brush, the bigger brush that I use for here, because manipulate the colour and then push it around. And the Derwents just melt. Now this brush is a bit too wet, so if you nip it, wipe, and you've made it flat, so turn it and then nip it again and it goes back to its normal colour. You've just taken a bit of water out. Because remember, we've already got colour on the end of that. We don't want to get rid of that colour. So we can just manipulate and tease that colour where we want it. And this is why you don't need to go to the edge with your scratching of your colour, because this is what the brush is for. The brush is to pick up the colour and manipulate it where you want it. And you can't really rub too many times, but it's barely damp. So I'm going to go for... Oops, move those 2 out of the way. So the number 4 brush, draw it back over the baby wipe. Baby wipe's the best. Then we can push this colour around. So we've picked up some colour, but it's paler, so we can get a lovely soft effect. So you can can push that colour around. And as soon as it's all melted, we can just move it about where we want it. Push it up to the line. We don't want to go over that line. We have a lovely soft watercolour effect. Just finish this one and I'll zoom in and we can see how that works. So of course if you've scratched all your colour in, you don't need your pencils. And again, you don't scribble the colour to the edge of the line, always leave a gap because then you've got a lovely highlight. And all the bounce, if you're doing this with pencils, you probably need about 10 different pencils. But all this manipulation of colour, all the bounce and the pressure is in the brush. So when that bends, it's not holding in your hand, putting pressure. So you can do this all day and your hands won't hurt, which is another reason why I invented this way of working. And again, it's totally dry, but we have a lovely watercolour effect. So I'll zoom in. A mouthful of warm tea, and then I'll zoom in and we can see exactly how to do that. And just bear with me a second, I'm just going to lower the camera because the camera so likes almost there. Behaves itself a lot better. Just move things to one side, then I can move the things up and down because it's going to be a little bit easier to do. So that was the cloud that I've just done. So I think I've done there's an apple there. So again, you've got to think smaller brush. So now you can see the sizes of the brushes. So if you want a small space, you want a smaller brush. So always look at the size you want. And I'll just see if I can get that into a better focus. I think that's better. So this is the number 2 Daler Round your Rigger. So if you stop doing anything for any length of time, your brush will dry out very quickly. So don't twist on a point and then just manipulate that colour. So I put a very pale green there, put 3 different greens on this apple. And then what I like to do is I use indigo for greens. Is you can put a little bit of that colour straight from the pencil. Now I suggest you do that off your work because if you splatter you'll get splatter, so I just need to get a little bit of that on there. And then you can put a little bit of shadow on the apple. Next we've got that little pink flamingo. So again, the smallest brush, manipulate that colour and it just melts, and then you can move it about a bit. So, and this one was actually a red, but I just used it very sparingly, and the red became a very soft peachy pink. No, not a purple pink, a peachy pink, which is obviously a flamingo colour. And you've still got colour on your leg, on your paintbrush, so you can do your legs. So we've got a little man there, so I'm going to go back to a bigger brush this time. And the idea is that if you do clean this one, there's all the colour is on the brush. You're not wasting any. You're not wasting any colour, because as a tight Yorkshire lass, I like the fact that every scrap of colour that gets off that pencil is going in my colour book. It's not going in the water pot and subsequently down the drain. Now it has a brolly, so I'm going to go to the very small brush now, because this is a small space, and then just activate that colour on the brolly, and then you can see they just melt together. So clean the brush, and we'll do the orange first. And I wanted a strong colour, so I coloured it in completely. If you want a watercolour effect, just colour a tiny bit. But I wanted a very strong yellow, so I've got full on colour there. So I'll do the little mushrooms while we're here. Again, I've coloured the colour in, and now I can push it around. And of course you've got a bit more control, because I didn't have any points on my pencils, but now I have a pointed brush. But there's no point sharpening the pencils, because you're just going to sharpen them and throw the bits in the bin. So I'll put that there. So we could look to see if we've got any other toadstools, and we have. Down there. Sorry guys. So again, I can show just how much red I've picked up. But look at this gorgeous pale colour, but it's from that really rich red. So again, we just go in there with this one. I think I've done that one. Haven't done these two down here. So that was Alfie asleep on the sofa. Apologies for snoring. I think he's barked on nearly every single video we've got. I think I've got 640 some up at the moment, and I don't think there's one that he hasn't barked on. And again, you know, if you had something else pale, you could use the colour. So that's the bit that was left on the brush. So when you dip it in, draw it back, that's a little bit of colour that I've wasted, which is very little. Just do these three little ones down there. But you pick this colour up, so if you had something that you wanted to be pale, just looking for something, you could use it. We'll do the little star, although it's going to look very pale, isn't it, against there. do this one here. So this is the colour I've picked up from the mushrooms, which would go down the drain. So I've now coloured something else in. So I'm going to the medium-sized brush, number 4. Twist on a baby, dunk in the water, twist and draw back to a baby wet to a point, and then you can manipulate this colour. So we want it really dark down here. Maybe a bit of a highlight towards the outside, and then we've got a bit on the brush and we can take that all the way up there to a lovely pale colour, and then there's a little bit down there, and then we have another cloud. So there's a bit of a cloud here, so manipulate that, and then you have enough to get up there, through there. And again, before I was nowhere near that line, but I've now melted it and got a lovely watercolour effect. We have a little man here, so we can give him some pale purple wings. And then we can kind of just we've got a little purple man now, and so of course that purple's quite strong, so when we clean our brush, got a little dot of purple, just a tiny bit, and there's another cloud there. This is the cloud that, so I'm going with a slightly bigger brush this time because I want to push it around a bit, but you only want it barely damp. So activate that, push it around. And you're just activating the tip of the brush because we don't really want to activate any more. So we have another cloud. And I didn't used to like the clouds until I found the indigo colour from there, and I do now. So I'll move this down slightly. So again, and pick up the colour. If it's too wet, nip it again, because we've got colour here, so we don't want to take that. There's no point trying to dry it or anything because we'll lose that colour. We've already got that colour. So if you nip it, it takes off enough colour, and push that about. Push it to the ends of the line, and then this is technique has taken quite a while to get used to, so you want to do a photocopy paper or a page in the book you don't like, and then it's dried. It's about a second before it's dried. That's just the pale, how unwet the brush is. It's very barely damp. A barely damp brush. That's all we want. Barely damp brush. And so we can be here where it's darker and push that up. I didn't want to start at the top because I want that natural highlight up there. So the bigger brushes stay a little bit damper longer, but most of them you only get one cloud before you've got to kind of dampen it again. So I kind of like that. And the other nice thing about getting all these clouds out of the way, especially with the Kerby Rosane one, is the fact we can see roughly what we're doing, and other things pop out. So we have another one at the bottom here. So again, I've got a bit of dark on there. So I've only scratched the darkness where we saw the hatching and cross hatching. So we have another one here. Now we can't see that rose very well. So if we look now what happens. That rose now has popped up. So we have our cloud, but we've also made that rose pop out. Oh, bye V, thank you for stopping by. Oh, thanks V, I will do, thank you. Have a lovely week. And the page is flat. So sometimes it's quite nice to get a certain thing out of the way. Now I've put some greys and browns on here, so excuse me, remember that these are our full brushes. Excuse me. So it would be a bit silly to do that one. So I'm going to go with the smallest one. If it was a tiny space, like here, I might go with a smaller one. So remember, bigger space, bigger brush. So smaller space, smaller brush. And I'm actually going to try and get a little bit of that warmth into there. So the tiny little brush, you can do that one there, because I don't want to excuse me. sorry guys, bit of a coughing fit there. So this one is Geranium Lake, and I think Geranium Lake is the one I actually used for the and so I've actually broken this one, but I'm not going to get rid of that because it's pure colour. So I've used it for a little bit of a shadow. And we can get quite a nice shadow on our tummy of our little dragon. So if you sharpen your point, you can sharpen it again, but do keep that because that's pure colour. So I'm going to do a slightly bigger brush and we'll go in with this one. So this is good if you're going on holiday. You could scratch this colour in, and you know there's no reason why you can't go back in it later when you get back, but you can do most of it while you're away. It's easy, it's quick, and it's clean. And then you can also put some shadows in at a later time. And again, that rose now pops out a bit. If you want to make that a bit darker, we've got... And I've missed a little bit of that one. So I'll go in with a smaller brush and manipulate that. So we found another, and that's a smaller one, so I'm going with the, I think I'm going to use the number 2. Again, we can push that around. Now you don't want to be doing this with the rigger, bending it too much. You're just almost tickling the page with the end of the brush, because we don't want to move about too much, because the riggers will go where they want to go. They're very, very bendy, but you just little circular motions or little upside down motions just to push that colour, and we have a lovely highlight. So we'll do the tree next. And I think the tree was sepia. So we're going to push that colour around, and then if we move it, we're going to get some darker bits. And just quite naturally, we've got some highlights. We haven't done anything. All we've done is just manipulated a little bit of colour, but we've got some highlights in there. And I love that. I love that. It's so easy. I mean, you may want to go in there and put a little bit darker colour in a bit later, but just for the moment, that's in there. So we'll have a very quick look at greens. And I think we have a sap green. So we can either do two things. We can use one colour and manipulate it. But remember, I like to do this because so this is what you can do. And there's actually another feather behind there. It's not a tree, that one is a feather, so we need to This is the broken one. Just scratch the tiniest little bit of colour there, and push it around. So we'll go with our number 4 brush. So we can scratch that, or what we can do is put either a paler green, or because it is actually a green, we can put primrose yellow. And I did a lot of this in the pineapple page. There's two that are using this. There's 2 videos that are using this technique of scratching 2 colours together, and with the pineapple one I think I did 6 colours. I think it's in the next book, which is in Animorphia. I'll just pan out a second and show you this one. So this is exactly the same technique. This is Derwent Inktense pencils, and this is Derwent watercolour pencils. Again, scratching a little bit of colour and manipulating it. So there's 2 videos on this page. The pineapple one, which is the Inktense. There's 6 colours scratched in there. 6 colours scratched in there, and then the 6 colours were done on every page. I did all the yellow, all the darker yellow, all the pale green, all the dark green, then all the brown, then the other greens, and the bit of blue. And I looked at a pineapple to actually get the colours for this. The same with this one. I actually looked at a picture of a pineapple. And again, it blows the idea of one colour. Lots of colours give you mud. There's 16 colours in one of these, so there's a lot of colours. And then I've used the lovely soft watercolour effect, scratched a little bit at the top and then manipulated it down. So I have that lovely bluebell watercolour effect. The same with the leaves. Scratched a little bit and then a damp brush and manoeuvre it around a bit. So you can do it with Inktense, you can do it with watercolour pencils, good quality watercolour pencils, and you can also do it with the Neo Colour 2s. They again do the same thing. So does the Peerless. The Peerless do as well. Let's see if I can find one. You can never find one when you want one. These are the Cotman with just 3 tubes of paint, lemon yellow, cerulean blue and Elysian crimson, but I got all these beautiful colours by mixing 3 colours. And again, once I've mixed the colour, tiny bit there, and manoeuvred it with a damp brush to give a wonderful watercolour effect. So you can work with, as long as it's a watercolour base, you can get this watercolour effect, and you can pre-scratch it if it's a water pencil or a crayon. So I think I'm going to use number 4 rigger for this one. And again, start with a highlight this time. Always start with the lightest and then pick up the dark, and then you can manoeuvre it. And because we have that yellow underneath, you can decide if you want to do all of it or if you want to actually mix it. You can decide how you want to colour. I find that if you put the original colour over a lighter colour, it's more of a natural highlight than if you use two different colours. Because the leaves are the same colour on the tree, it's just that the light's catching some and not the other. So if you think about it that way, you may want to mix colours that are the same. And instead of having white, we've got a highlight. We haven't added white, we've added a lighter yellow. Lighter yellow to the green. And that's given us our nice colours. So we have a lovely tree now. So we've got lots of little creatures. I never know what colours to do with the creatures. Never know what colours. We have this rose here. I'll do the rose next. I'll zoom back in and then we can have a real good nosy. I'll just have to put that there to see if I can... So we want our rose. Oops. Got our roses there. So again, we look at our reds. Now, the old masters used to kind of use, if they had a red here, they would use the same red. But of course, this is a colour book, so we can do what we want. I think I like this one. This one is crimson red. So again, I'm just going to scratch colour here. And where the cross hatching is, so again, they're easier to colour, these books. You don't have to think about it. Just put the colour where the cross hatching is. And again, I don't have a sharp point. I do have a bit of a point, but I would say that's a blunt, oops, sorry, that was a blunt pencil. And that's another one that, you know, although it's blunt, I've got some facets on there that I can use if I want a sharp corner. You see that they're both shiny? That's because there is, I think there must be a wax in both of them. Definitely they used to dip, if you watch a vintage video of how the Derwent pencils were made, they were dipped into, when they got the strips, they dunked them into a strip. So I think I'm going for the smallest brush this time because I want a watercolour effect. So I'm going to pick out this colour here, which is quite strong, and then just manoeuvre that across. Pick out a strong bit. Now if it was very strong you would have to clean your brush because it's a very strong red, is this. So I'm trying to manoeuvre it into different places so when I come back to another spot it's paler. If I'd have just gone that way, so under there, pick up that gorgeous colour, do the next bit, and then do that bit, and then do this bit, and then we'll pick up that dark colour. So we have a watercolour effect, but we haven't done anything. I think that's the cloud, that one, and I think this is I think that's a petal. So again, it can be pale. So pick up a bit of colour. Barely damp brush. Push that colour about. Go under there, then go over the top, go back under there. Go behind there and that bit, then we can have this one here. That one. And we've got some more colours. And I'm not technically doing anything except for, instead of going into the next one, I'm moving away. So I'll do this one. Then when I go back, I've got a highlight. I do that a lot with the crystals. There's a couple of videos where we're colouring in crystals, and you don't use anything different. You just go work in a different place. So under there first, then we might think of going there, and then here last. And that's a leaf. So we've got some really nice watercolour effects, but we've not done anything, we've just coloured it in. So we have a green. So I think we'll have spring green, and this one is the Prismacolor. This is Prismacolor spring green. So again, oh, I might have to do a different colour because that's too light. So I like these leaves to be lighter, but never mind. So if I haven't wet that, I've scratched it, but I haven't activated it in theory, and I don't have my nice electric eraser handy, unfortunately. So where is it? It's there. Make sure it's all dry all around it. Now if you did this and wet it, it wouldn't come off, but because I hadn't wet it, I hadn't activated it, it's just a pencil. It's almost come off, it's almost gone. If I'd have wet it, it wouldn't work. For goodness sake, don't do that if you wet it. But if you haven't wet it, you've scratched it, you can then erase it. So I'm going to put some dark where this dragon is. I'm using all the little stems. I'm going to put some dark at the bottom. We have enough to get up there. I might put a little bit down there. Be really dark. And that's the stem, that one. The roses I might do a different colour. And you really are scratching just that little bit of colour in there. And you'll probably find that you have some colour left on the brush, so you don't have to panic. If you've missed one, don't panic. It's going all the way down here, and then that seems to go on the snail, under the snail, this one. So the other thing you can do is to try and get the green at the bottom. I think that's a leaf. I think that's a leaf. And that goes up there. That's a leaf. That's a leaf. And then over here, so we've got quite a lot of green on this bit now. Just zoom out a little bit and you can see the area that I'm going to be working on. Just have to move my water. Oops. So I think I'm going to be using the number 2. So, sorry guys, I'll move the water pot out of the way, and then it would be easier. So we're going to activate that green and then push it up there. So we have a lovely rich colour here, but it's gone naturally pale and we haven't done anything. So if we leave the green on and then just work behind, because they're going to be in shadow anyway. So we do have some green on here now. So what we can do is, see, we've got the green, but it's getting paler. So it's still doing the same job. So we've got this one. By the time we've manipulated all that, I should have re-wet the brush really, but there we go. We've got that lovely natural highlight on there. And because it's a small space, we really do need to clean our brush every time. Take that up there. Now it may be darker down there, but we'll have a look in a minute. Pick that up again, take that one that way. It just melts into a beautiful colour. So we've got this one next. So I've left that one out, so we'll do this one next. So we need to just keep following it to where it's gone. And I have now the palest green to go on that one. So that looks like it's catching all the light. If we want to just manipulate that one, we put a bit of dark down there. But again, you can go back in and put darker. This is just to get one. Now you want to be fairly comfortable if you can, because twisting your wrist around, you're going to go over your lines. So we've got one there. This is quite dark, and then we've got enough to do with that one. That's quite dark. And we want to keep that dark, because remember what we said about a darker. And somebody actually mentioned the word the other day, but if you put a darker, a darker next to a highlight, your highlight looks brighter, and vice versa. But you can go back in and say we can do darker. What you can't do is do lighter. So this is just a really soft way to do things, and then you can go back in. I would give it a day to dry, unless you dry it with a hairdryer, but I still wouldn't do that. I'd do this when I was out and about. This is the easy, quick bit, and then you can come back to it, have a look at it, and think what else it needs. So this didn't have any green on it at all, but I've managed to get green. So you'll probably find, no, that one's, I'm going to leave the little roses for the minute, so we go on this one next up here. Now I know there's a shadow down there, but this now wants to be lighter. So we have that lovely highlight on that bit, and then this bit. I'll just move in a second. Sometimes when you start, you don't want to stop, because you're going to lose that lovely highlight. So this one, And where I use yellow for a highlight, I sometimes use indigo blue for a green highlight shadow. Oops. I'm going to take that one up there. And again, I know that that's going to be darker under that leaf there, but I'm not going to do that yet. I'm manipulating this one so we don't want any hard lines. We have that lovely highlight. And a tablespoon of water is all you're using. And again, we've got a little bit of variation on that one. So we're going to follow this one round. And that one goes under there. Pull this one down. And it's a very easy, quick way to work. You haven't got thousands of pencils everywhere. And you can do this one even on the beach. If you want to just take a water brush, you can do this one. Again, just manipulate that, get the colour going, and then take it down there. And that's very little work for a lovely highlight. Now eventually the baby white will get quite wet because it is picking up water, so you've got two choices. You don't dip into the water anymore, and I have actually coloured a page without any water. If you get a baby wipe out, see that now? It's wet. So I can just use this now. I don't need the water. This is enough water. It's a barely damp brush. And I've missed that section there. So scratch a little bit of colour. And with the same number 2 aqua rigger, go in there and then push that gorgeous softness out. Again, you can always go back later. You can always go back and darken it. Because obviously all these curls want to be darker. Just looking at that, I don't know if that's a feather. I think that could be feather there. And I'm dunking the brush. There's no waste at all the colours on here, because you've taken it to nothing, so there's nothing on the brush. There is a leaf here. Again, it's got the highlight on it, so we just want the top. So I'm not sure what's down there, and because I'm not sure, I'm going to leave it. It could either be a bit of pink flamingo, but I'm going to leave that bit down there. So I'm going to just do the leaves of the rose, and I want a dark for this. I think that's quite a dark. So there's no point trying to scratch into there really. I don't have a sharp point, but I don't need a sharp point. I'm just going to pick a bit of colour up here, says she. wet the brush. And this is how you do your shadows now. So actually, I don't think I want that, because that green is completely different to this. But I do believe it's made with an indigo. So I'm going to take. I've got indigo out somewhere. So this is blue and it's indigo. So you can do two things. You can scratch this one, which is number 36, which is what I did. Number 36 is indigo, and you want a tiny brush. Pick up the colour, twist, and I'm just going to go like this. Where they've turned over, I'm putting indigo blue, because indigo blue is probably the blue that's in this, that's in to make this dark green. And there's another one there. And now you do have blue, because you're mixing it, actually mixing it here. So this is now a paper palette. So you've got very strong colour. So you're not watercolouring anymore. This is the strong colour. This we want to shadow. Underneath all of them that curl here. We want a shadow, and if you have more, if you have darker ones, so we'll go under here, there's a little one up here, and pick up the blue. Again, your brush is only barely damp, so you have to keep an eye on it. That's blue. I thought it was slightly more than that, but I think that will do. And I have a bit of blue on there, so just going back into that lighthouse with a little bit of blue, and then still got that little bit of grey on there, so I thought that would be quite nice down there, just as a bit of a shadow. This one up here has a shadow, and then there's a green there. This is quite dark, this one. So that's more of an olive colour. So what I need to do is to get the olive colour that I used. Or was that sap green? I think that looks like sap green. So I've got sap green. And 36, so we've got 36 and 49 sap green, and again this is a bit more detailed, but it's another way to work. We've got that green, but now we've got that blue in there. So now we can go in there and it's connected because we've made it with the sap green. We can have a shadow. I think that's a feather. And we can get a really nice highlight on there. And the other thing we can do is re-wet our brush, and we can actually colour the whole of this shadow in with the darker colour. So we've got a darker shadow on there. And I did waste a little bit there. Twist to a point and it's ready for next time. It's a television there, which I'm not going to do. We have another, I think that one was the sap green, wasn't it, that one? So we have another tree. This time we're at the other side, so just bear with me a second. So we have a tree there. So again, I'm going to put the dark sap green so everywhere that there's cross hatching, that's the dark proper green colour. And again, it's quite rough, it's just a scribble. It's in the lines, but it's still just a bit of a scribble until everything's got a little bit of green on it. And then I'm going to put the yellow. I'll have the Prismacolor. Now there's no, so the Swiss colour, there isn't a number on this one, I don't think. There should be, oh yes, it's here. It's 61816, and that's the Swiss colour. There, 61816. And again, I like the fact that I'm using a Derwent green and a Swiss colour yellow. So instead of leaving this to go pale, it's going to be the same green, but it's going to have the yellow through it. So it's going to have a paler colour through it. So everywhere's got that little bit of scratched yellow. And the nice thing is you can put the pencil back now. So I think I'll go with the number 4 brush. Because this is the area that I'm working with. So we do the yellow first, drop down to pick up the green, and then we could just do one light layer over. So we've changed that colour. So over with the yellow, and then blend in that green. And again, if it's too wet, just nip it. And then that'll be just the right